Hello and welcome everyone. We are today going to do a deep dive into the fight between Beneil Dariush and Charles Oliveira coming up this weekend at UFC 289. Now, if this is your first time on the channel, you may not have seen one of these before, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down this fight in depth. As you see here, I've written out a lot of notes, so you may have to zoom in. My notes are going to be a bit smaller today as there's a lot to cover. You may have to zoom in or just listen as I talk through them. In addition to that, if this is not your first time here, welcome back. I'm sure glad you made it. We're going to cover this fight in depth here in a moment. But first, you can find me over on Twitter, 138MMA, Tapology, same name. And you can also find me over on patreon.com/138MMA, where you can find access to all of my notes, my picks with confidence. You can find access to my Patreon parlay. You can also get some other random stuff that I put out, like maybe Invicta picks or PFL picks or whatever. I don't do deep dives into those cards, but if I find a spot that I like, I will put that out on the Patreon. So that is all over there. And, last but not least, crack open a nice ice-cold root beer, kick your feet up on the coffee table, and let's break down this fight, shall we? We've got a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and dive right into it. As I mentioned, you can go ahead and zoom in if you'd like to in order to read some of this, but otherwise just listen as I talk. I'm going to kind of go over everything. These guys are both very violent-minded individuals. Now, for Charles Oliveira, he's going to come forward and fight like he's trying to get into a car crash with somebody, and that's because he's all offense, no defense, or next to no defense, and that's what he's looking to do in most of his fights, and it's worked out very well for him throughout his career because he gets a lot of finishes. He does hold the record for the most subs in the UFC, which is fantastic. On the other hand, Beneil Dariush is a very violent man in his own right. He's going to try to use techniques that are getting the fight finished. He's not looking to win on the scorecards. I mean, sure, you'd take that over a loss, but he's looking to get the finish in every single fight. There are, and I know you're probably thinking like, yeah, but like, doesn't everybody want to get the finish? Not so much. There's a lot of fighters content just to grind out 3 rounds. In fact, they enjoy that. But Beneil Dariush is going in there and he's trying to make everything count. He's looking for the finish. So this should be a violent matchup. What that means is fight doesn't go to decision is a good play if you're betting on this one. So unless the odds are ridiculous, I haven't looked yet. But either way, let's break down the striking of these two first. So first things first, let's start with Beneil Dariush. He's a solid striker who likes to strike in combination and end those combinations with leg kicks. Why is that important? Because as his opponent's getting out of range with the punches, he'll throw that big heavy leg kick to cover a lot more distance and land back in range, and also land a leg kick. I mean, you might as well land something if you can, but he's using that from the back leg to come all the way through as if it's a big step and then get back into range. He will then string in another combination if he's in range. If not, if the opponent got far enough away or circle off, then, well, restart, but he's out of danger. It doesn't matter. So the leg kick at the end of the combination, I do like. Even more than the leg kicks, his body kicks are absolutely devastating. And something that you'll learn, or that you may already know, is that Dariush, being a southpaw, he goes up against a lot of orthodox strikers. Now, in this matchup here, Charles Oliveira, being an orthodox striker, we'll have to pay attention to this. The orthodox striker stands with the right foot and back, right? So the right foot and back is here with the open body to the southpaw throwing that rear side roundhouse kick. So for the southpaw, who stands the opposite with their left leg and back, they throw that roundhouse kick to an open body of the orthodox striker. Now you'd say, yeah, but the orthodox striker has the same deal on the southpaw. True, but if you know anything about anatomy, you know that the liver is on the right side of the body. So what does that mean? Well, that means that Beneil Dariush has a devastating body kick for one extra reason, and that's because the liver, when you get hit, anybody that's ever been hit in the liver, you're basically paralyzed for a few moments. So you drop like a sack of potatoes and you're out. You're down. You can't do anything. It's involuntary. I know people are like, oh yeah, I could take a punch or I could take a shot to the body. It's not when you get hit in the liver. You just drop. It's not up to you. So that makes that body kick a little bit more dangerous, because if he ends up hitting the old liver tickler, he's going to drop Charles Oliveira, or anybody for that matter, and standing from that orthodox stance against the southpaw with a good body kick, that is a big risk for you. Now, his devastating body kicks can also work in his favor, because after you have to block enough body kicks, your hands start to come down. And what does that do? That sets up the head kick when he needs it. He doesn't use it as often. He uses the body kick a whole lot more, and he'll come back with the hands up top, and that's totally fine, but it is an option for him. Now, his accuracy makes him seem like a more powerful striker than he may be. He doesn't come out there and just throw big bombs. That's not what Dariush does. But what he is accurate. He makes his shots count. He averages around 50%, I believe, in the UFC so far, which is pretty darn good. Over the course of a long career like Dariush has had, 50% is not bad for striking accuracy, especially when he's fought some of the killers like he has throughout his career. He's going to put forth a good amount of volume as well, landing over the UFC average in significant strikes per minute. But being with the defense, he absorbs less than 3 strikes per minute, which is below the average of the UFC. So why is he getting that number? Why is he staying defensively sound? It's because he gets his head off the center line a lot. And it might look like he's throwing wild shots sometimes, where he'll come over with an overhand and get his head way down. That probably looked horrible for you guys from your angle. And yes, he could get countered with something there, but the way he does it is he then keeps that option open to go to the legs for a takedown, go behind, or duck under and go behind, take the back, or come back up with another strike. And because he has that dynamic attack, getting his head off the center line does not give people the same willingness to counter as they would if they knew he was coming with solely a striking-based attack. So he's going to be able to mix that in, work his head off the center line a lot of the time, and just not get hit, not absorb a lot of damage. One thing I don't know if I like about Beneil Dariush is that he comes in with the flying knee to close distance. Now, I would love that if he was a little bit more of an athletic striker. And I'm not going to say this because he is a professional athlete, so I'm not going to say this and say that he's not athletic. But he's not the most athletic fighter. When you look at him, you're saying, okay, he's a fighter, whatever. But he's not like, you don't look at him and say, man, that guy's a freak athlete. So when he comes in with the flying knee, it's not the fastest flying knee. He often doesn't land it and, get the knockout with the flying knee. Like Kenny, yeah, absolutely he could. But he uses it more to close distance and land in the tie clinch. So I like it for that, but it is a big movement, which over the course of a fight with a guy like Charles Oliveira, you don't want to be blowing up all your energy because Charles Oliveira is going to be making you work. However, I don't think this fight's going to last that long, so maybe there's that. When he does land, he gets into the tie clinch, which is good for him because what he's going to do is he has really good control, gets that nice tie plum there, and starts skipping those knees through. And instead of just the quick skipping knee like you kind of see when somebody's just kind of working on a tie bag, he'll on the banana bag. There you go. He'll really turn those hips in and crank down on the opponent's neck and just drive 1, 2, driving those knees over and over and over. So his tie clinch comes in very well off of his flying knee, and his timing is what syncs all this together. He knows when to put the flying knee out there, so he's not putting himself at risk often. He knows when to throw the body kick, when to come in with the combinations up top, mix in the elbows because he does have nice elbows. I did not put that up there, but he does have that. His timing is what makes him seem faster than he really is. So the striking of Beneil Dariush, solid. I like it. For Charles Oliveira, it's a lot different. It's a tale of two different styles, or two different aspects of his game anyway. He has solid striking, don't get me wrong. He's got very good long-range weapons. He works the teeps very well at range because his legs are long, and he's got good long straight shots. He will have a reach advantage here. It's not freakishly long reach advantage, but he does have a reach advantage. He's very dangerous when he closes into the pocket. He's going to use all of his weapons, his knees, his elbows, obviously his punches and kicks, everything. He uses that all very well in the pocket or at range, but he's a very dynamic striker. The thing is, he's going to crash forward just with violence, pure violence. And as you try to circle away, he's cutting off the cage. So he's making you try to get out of the way of this car crash that's about to happen in front of you. And he's making it very tough because this car crash seems to be going everywhere you're trying to go. And he's going to put forth a lot of volume. His grappling threat, being so good on the mat, makes it so it's hard to feign a takedown against him because he does not care. So his grappling threat makes it so he can really open up that offense without fear of being taken down. And him feigning a takedown is going to make you kind of bite on that a little bit more, just knowing how skilled Charles Oliveira is on the mat. Because obviously, like I said, the guy holds the record in the UFC for the most amount of submissions. I think I already said that. Anyway, the last thing I want to point out here is that lead hook that he has, on offense anyway, that lead hook that he has. As he gets guys circling off the cage and he's cutting them off, he will circle them into that lead hook. He might not be able to have that same advantage here because I can see a lot of times as he's trying to circle off, Dariush countering with the body kick. But either way, that lead hook is deadly from Charles Oliveira, and I do like that a lot. The defense is what I don't like. Zero head movement. He's extremely hittable in the pocket. And last thing is he doesn't handle pressure super well. So like because he's usually the one pressuring forward. When somebody meets him with that same amount of pressure and comes forward on him, he doesn't handle it as well. We saw that in the first round of the Charles Oliveira-Michael Chandler fight, where Chandler was able to do pretty well in that first round. Obviously, he won the first round. He had a lot of success by pressuring Charles Oliveira and making him take steps back, as opposed to the opposite being true like Oliveira normally does when he walks guys down and starts just bringing those knees up and throwing those teeps up the middle and just walking guys down with strikes. So his striking offensively is fantastic. Defensively, it kind of leaves a little bit to be desired. However, the tie clinch for him is also pretty deadly, where he'll get a hold of you with even just one hand with that like halfway into the tie clinch and just sling elbows, knees. And from here, he can also just kind of pummel, get underneath, get those underhooks and drag you to the mat if he needs to. He can come back over the top if he wants to go that way and use the control with the whizzer, whatever he needs to do. He can get you moving to where he needs you to move. So both guys have, the tie clinch is probably going to be pretty even with these two because they're both very solid in that. The striking, however, better offense, better defense, but both guys have good offense, don't get me wrong, but it's clear Charles Oliveira has a better striking offense just because he's so much more dangerous and kind of that relentless pressure that he puts on. Here's where things get interesting is the grappling, though, because Beneil Dariush is a solid grappler. He has good takedowns, but he prefers to take the back almost from a standing or up against the cage position rather than just shoot the takedown straight away. But he does, and he has done it before. But he likes to get up against the cage and take the back from here. He also has some trips and throws from there, but realistically, his goal is to get under and get around to your back and then just kind of climb on you, treat you like a jungle gym, get on your back and start pulling you down from there, or start looking for the rear naked choke or whatever he's got to work on because he wants to take your back. Now, once it gets to the mat, that's his goal anyway. He's got a large toolbox, but taking the back is where he wants to be. He's very positionally sound once he gets there, or from anywhere, but once he gets there, he's very positionally sound, controls with that body triangle a lot of the time, can work for different things, but just is hard to get out of there. He does the human backpack, as people always say about when they're talking about Aljamain Sterling, for example. But he does that very well, very positionally sound. Now, when it comes to his submission game, he has a whole arsenal of them. Maybe not as many as Charles Oliveira, because the guy holds the record in the UFC, like I said, but he's got a whole lot of them. And Charles Oliveira, who was submitted in his last loss, obviously can be submitted. In fact, he's been submitted quite a few times. So it's not out of the question to say that although Oliveira's got great grappling, that Beneil Dariush could also be able to get the submission game going for him. So in the grappling, this is going to be very interesting. The one thing I don't like is if he wants to get back to his feet, he often gives up his back because he'll roll to the knees and try to stand up that way. I do not like that against a guy like Charles Oliveira, but it's a minor thing because I don't think that that's really going to be the case. I don't think he's going to be trying to get back to his feet. I think he's willing to grapple with Charles Oliveira and see if his grappling can match up. I do think he's willing to do that. Now, for Oliveira, he has good timing on his double leg, so his takedown's pretty good, but he will leave his neck out there. And I think if he leaves his neck out there against a guy like Dariush, that's trouble. So what Charles Oliveira likes to do, his opponent's coming through, throwing the punches, and he likes to duck under and shoot that double leg, but he'll stick the head to the outside. Now, if you know that, like, from a wrestling perspective, that's okay. But when it comes to MMA, you can lock in a guillotine from there. And what's the problem is, well, Charles Oliveira's got a kind of a long neck, so he can put that right out there, put it on the outside, use it to push, but what he's going to do is end up getting his neck taken, and when he gets his neck taken there, that's a problem. Now, it hasn't really come back to bite him, but it can and it may against a guy like Dariush, so keep that in mind. Now, once he gets to the ground, though, Charles Oliveira has excellent Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, some of the best in the entire UFC, and I don't think that's crazy to say. He has a gigantic toolbox. This dude's showing up like he went to Sears before they closed down and bought the biggest gosh darn toolbox that you could get. He's got that in his garage with everything. He's got every kind of tool you could ever imagine. Charles Oliveira's coming in there with it all. Now, the thing is, he does this aggressively as well. So when he's coming in, he's not just looking to grapple and maintain position or whatever. He's coming at you as aggressive as possible, sneaking in elbows to open up the submissions, things like that, as well as just chaining submissions together over and over and over. And he's very dangerous off of his back as well. And that keeps a lot of guys from, when they're on top, being able to open up with the ground and pound. Because when they start opening up with the ground and pound, what happens is you give your arms up, or you get your head off, off balance or whatever. You get caught up in a triangle or something like that. Whatever it may be, get your arm caught for an armbar, triangle, Kimura, whatever. It's hard to posture up on a guy like Charles Oliveira because you know how dangerous he is off his back. And then once he is on the mat and he's working on all these, whether he's sweeping from the bottom and gets back to the top, which he is freaking excellent at, he also uses his elbows in his own right to open up the submissions, either from the bottom or from the top. So this matchup is actually a really close matchup. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you now that for me, other than maybe betting fight doesn't go to decision, I'm probably just going to kick my feet up on the coffee table, crack open a couple of cold root beers, and just enjoy this thing because that's what I want to do in this fight. I will make a pick because that's what I do on this channel, and I think it's going to come down to a couple of things. So first things first, how does that initial exchange go? Okay? When Charles Oliveira comes out, starts doing that thing with the knees coming up and walking down his opponent, trying to, go to the other, end of the cage, get him up against the cage and start working his shots. When he does that, how does Dariush respond? Does Dariush respond by spamming that body kick, throwing it heavy, and hitting Charles Oliveira in the body and making him think, oh, man, I can't just go forward on this guy? Or does he respond by coming with the flying knee and trying to get into the tie clinch, work from there? Or does he allow Charles Oliveira to move forward, trying to pick his shots and counter? Because if he tries that, I think Oliveira is going to win for sure. However, if he starts doing any of those other options, going with the body kick, which I think is his best option here, or trying to use that flying knee to get in close, which I think is kind of the neutral option here, that's going to change where I think this fight goes. This is a very razor-thin close fight. And I know a lot of people are saying, oh, man, we've been underestimating Beneil Dariush for so long. We have to give him all the credit in the world right now. And I understand that. And a lot of people have underestimated Beneil Dariush. So I understand the want to give him credit. But if you give him too much credit, then you start to overlook Charles Oliveira, who's one fight removed from being the world champion, and a very impressive run, although he did take a lot of damage in his run, a very impressive run. This is a super tough fight, and I hate to have to make a pick. In fact, I haven't made a solid pick, but I keep coming back to the same thing over and over, and I keep coming back to saying Charles Oliveira is probably getting this one done for two reasons. One, I love the violence out of the guy, and two, I think that loss to Islam Makhachev actually did him well, because what it did is he was starting to get to that I'm the champion, his head's getting big. He's like, I'm a lion, whatever, all this crazy stuff. Walking lions as like a thing. Head was getting a little bit too big, and he was starting to think he can't be beaten. And I think that when you get that step back, much like in Rocky 3, when Clubber Lang takes Rocky Balboa, beats him inside the distance, Rocky then says, oh, I need to reevaluate my game. I need to go train with Apollo Creed. I know, sorry, spoiler alert for Rocky 3. And then when he comes back, he's so much better. Why is that? Well, because he got humbled. And I think that's what happened to Charles Oliveira. He got humbled. That fight was not close against Islam Makhachev. And Charles Oliveira knows that. So now I do think that he's going to improve. I think we're going to see the Charles Oliveira that got him to the title fight in the first place. And I think that he's going to be able to get this one done. It's going to be a tough fight. I won't be surprised either way. But for me right now, my pick is Charles Oliveira. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And if you've enjoyed this video, please do me the favor and like this video. I appreciate it very much. I will see you soon for my full card preview and predictions breakdown. Maybe you've already watched that. If it's already out, I'll have it pop up on the end screen. It might already be up. See you guys very soon. Thank you again for watching. Take care.